to all our listeners. My name is Steve van Zyl. I'm the National Technical Manager, and I'm also the IOPSA Gauteng appointed COVID-19 representative. My co-host, as you mentioned, is Steve Brown, who is also our Operations Manager. Ladies and gents, we've received requests from some of our plumbing members to share some basic guidelines on how to approach and manage appointments with consumers with the aim of protecting their staff, including the consumers. I must say we've also received some concerns that people are not taking things seriously, placing others at risk, not wearing a mask, for example. When wearing a mask, not correctly wearing the mask, for example, not covering your nose as an example. Steve and I hope that by sharing and highlighting some basic guidelines today that we can only add or strengthen your current internal COVID-19 health and safety policy and procedure, and obviously just at the end of the day, make it better for all. I just want to mention that we in no way is medical doctors, and therefore just rely on rules and regulations that seem to be coming out at various times, and those are set by government, and also guidance from our own occupational health and safety officer, Mr. Chris Kutsia. So today we're going to be having a little chat about face masks, what the law requires of us. We're going to look at pre-appointment questions, how they could limit risk to you or your business. We're going to show you an example of a COVID-19 track and trace register. Some good practices during and after. So for example, if you're offering a service to a consumer at their premises, what are those good practices that could assist you, or just make things a little bit better, a little bit more less riskier is what I want to say. And maybe just to consider some vehicle sanitizing, those HTAs, which stands for high touch areas. So guys, I just want to start off by saying I went to a business the other day, and if you look on the left hand side in red and bold, it starts off with not negotiable. I saw the sign, and I'm going to read it to you. It said, before entering our offices, please wear a face mask at all times, sanitize your hands using our sanitizer, maintain social distancing of 2 meters. We need to take your temperature and need to complete a register, and we're also going to ask a few questions relating to COVID-19. And it clearly said there at the bottom of this statement, or this poster that was in their office, if no risks are evident, we can assist you. Now, when I first initially read this, I thought, wow, there's a lot to take in, and there's a lot of stuff to do, and it's really a lot of loops to jump or red tape. But when I try to put myself in the shoes of the small business, I'm talking about, it was a small 3 to 4 man business from what I could see, the following came to mind. They're definitely looking after their business. Maybe they cannot afford any financial loss due to any downtime, quarantine time, or even a fine for not following processes and procedures. And I must say, I thought at the end they were only trying to protect their most important asset, which is their staff, from the COVID-19 or from any type of exposure. They actually showed caring that came through when I looked at it from a different set of glasses, and clearly did not appear to be compromising on anything. They just wanted to play it safe. So I think, suddenly from looking at it from one lens and then from another lens, it made perfect sense that these guys are running a business and they want to continue running it with limited risk. Now, if you look on the right-hand side of that slide, you'll see there was a government notice that was issued on the 12th of July, and that basically was the amendment to a regulation, which I'm going to just read to you as well, which is Regulation 5. And on that Regulation 5, it says the following. It says the wearing of cloth masks, homemade item, or any other appropriate item that covers one's nose and mouth. And I think it's important just to note that it's nose and mouth, and that this is mandatory for every person when in a public space. That's the first point that I want to make. And then if you move further down on this slide, you'll see there's a sub-regulation number 2, and it says no person will be allowed to use, operate, perform any service on any form of public transport, or enter or be in a building, place, or premises without, including a government building, places or premises used by the public to obtain goods or service or be in a public open area if he or she is not wearing a cloth face mask, homemade item, or another appropriate item that covers, once again, the nose and the mouth. As I mentioned earlier, we seem to be getting a little bit concerned, people being a little bit lax. There just seems to be, like, I'll cover my mouth, but not my nose. And guys, I think that the directive that I'm pointing out now indicates that an employer or manager or owner of a building, that offers goods and services will be responsible if a person enters and remains in such a building or premises without wearing a mask. Now, the penalty, and I'm going to show you on the next slide, is already in place, and it's actually mentioned in Regulation 14.6.7. And that penalty basically boils down that should you not take reasonable care or precautions to ensure that masks are worn into your premises, that a fine can be imposed, which can result in a financial fine, as an example, or imprisonment of a period not exceeding 6 months, or both. So, saying that, let's just have a look at what that sub-regulation looks like and where it can be found. So there we go. It clearly says a manager or owner of a building needs to, obviously, will be accountable. It's that person's responsibility to ensure that reasonable steps are put in place and followed as point 5, point 2, point B, as I've mentioned to you. And if it's not, you basically, you're committing an offence and will be liable on conviction to a fine or imprisonment. Now, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, none of us can really afford that. Who wants to be closed down or not closed down? Who would want a fine? Who would want to go through all that kind of stuff? So let's just play it safe. So saying that, guys, let's just quickly have a look at the first point that I mentioned we're going to be discussing today. So it starts off on the left-hand side. That information is key to identifying potential risks and reduce the spread of COVID-19 virus. Guys, we highly recommend it when you set up an appointment, especially if you're going out and your business model is one that you're sending out, for example, maybe plumbers to a client's premises, that you maybe upfront confirm some questions to the consumer or the guy that you're offering the service to. These questions that you see on the right-hand side are very good questions. They help you establish any risks that you or your staff need to be maybe aware of before attending any work at their premises. Like I said, can you afford downtime in your business? I don't know. And what financial impact could there be to you and your staff if you have such downtime? So those kind of questions, and I'm just thinking if I'm sitting in an office and I've got a call that I've got to go and attend a client. So these questions are, as I said, we've used in our own model and we're sharing them with you. So we, for example, would ask, have you been in contact to the consumer? Have you been in contact with anyone who has been infected or suspected of COVID-19? So you'd obviously get your answer on that. You'd ask the question, for example, is anyone in your home, if you're going to be going to a home as an example, been in quarantine or tested positive for COVID-19? And then importantly, you also want to see if there's anyone that's at that property that's elderly, sick, or immunocompromised. You've obviously heard that word being thrown around. So remember that you don't want to also bring risk to that, and within your own internal processes, you might have various checks that you do every morning with your staff. But it's also important. So if the guy says, listen, we've got someone that's extremely elderly or immunocompromised, maybe you could even make a recommendation if that person could be put into a room or be isolated from wherever you're going to work in that property, as an example. And that's why I've used the word, are there any special requests? So ask it to the consumer. I think it's key that you get this kind of information. Like I said, at the end of the day, you're only protecting your most important asset, which is your staff, and obviously any downtime. Guys, once you've got that questions and there's no risks, I think then obviously, you can play it safe and go out and obviously wear the correct PPE, wear the masks and all that kind of stuff that goes with it. If you do identify any risks, what I suggest you do is that, then you carefully consider, do you want to take on that? I mean, if someone says, we've just been tested positive for COVID-19, we're not well, we're sick and that, you're going to have to play it very, very, very safe. So, an idea of a screening document. So up front, you could make that phone call to the consumer or the person asking for the service. But we would also like to recommend, and it's something that we've implemented within our own business, that when we get out to site, that we ask a screening questionnaire at the premises. Now, it might seem a lot, but this document is also seen as a track and trace document. So I just want to quickly show to you that this is only an idea of a screening document. So what I've did is we tried to modify it slightly to fit more into like a plumbing model. And if you read through the document, it guides you on some important things. So, you know, you try and use your own pens. Guys, if you're the plumber, you'd fill in the first section. You'd put in your detail, who are you, your contact number, your ID number. You'd ask, for example, and you'd ask yourself some 2 important questions before signing as a plumber. You may have 2 or 3 plumbers, so this document can be, as I said, added or moved. It's only an example, guys. So you ask yourself the question. The plumber would then obviously say no, as an example, if he hasn't been in quarantine or tested positive for COVID-19. It asks the question, are you currently suffering from any of the following symptoms? Fever, high temperature, cough, or sore throat? The plumber answers no. Let's just use the example that he's the only plumber going out to site. You then would obviously need to then ask the consumer or the duly authorized. So it might not be that the homeowner is there, but maybe a housekeeper is there, for example. And from a track and trace purpose, it's important that we would get that person's details, because you want to know who did you come in contact with at that premises. So you'd fill in that person's details, that person's contact number, and that person's ID number. The questions would also then be posed. Has anyone in your home been in quarantine or tested positive for COVID-19? Once again, trying to identify, are there any risks that you should be aware of? Anyone at the property elderly, sick, or immunocompromised? Very simple question, yes or no, guys. And then we've got a little section we've put in there, and basically you can see it's in dark. It's not the best of pictures, and I wish it could be a little bit better than what I've got at the moment. But it says, either consumer or duly authorized confirmed that the above mentioned plumbers are wearing a face mask and PPE. And what it does is just basically brings reassurance that they are wearing a face mask and their PPE. So as a business owner, I'd be very comfortable if the consumer would see, okay, this plumber is wearing the PPE, is wearing his mask, and then by signing on in the yes or no column, I'd be able to gauge that he's following procedures or internal procedures set by my company, as an example. So if it's yes, it says, I confirm the above and permission granted to enter the premises. And obviously you then get a signature from that duly authorized or that consumer. This document should be kept by the plumbing company. It must be signed off by all parties. And as I said, just once again, it's just to identify any potential risks. And if, you know, my advice is that if there's something that stands out seriously and there is a risk, you know, guys, why would you want to expose yourself to such kind of risk? And you'd have to decide if you're going to continue or not to offer the service. You know, it might mean you need more PPE. You may need to think of things differently. And how can I do the job with the limited or the least amount of exposure, as an example to you. Remember, we want to spread the disease. We want to curb it. We want to get rid of it, in other words. The document must be kept by the plumbing company. And at this point, you know, if you ask me for how long, I'd probably say I keep it for as long as possible. So as long as you've got some record that if anyone does fall ill, maybe on your side of the business, that at least you can go back and say, well, this person A on this day met this person, and so we can then obviously make a little link as to who the person was in contact over a certain period of time, and that's why we refer to it as a track and trace kind of register. So just to keep in mind that anyway, it's just as a sideline, the incubation period of the virus, as I understand, is 5 days. And but I would recommend that you just keep this document on record for some time. Don't just throw it away. It is a very, very important document. As I said, it's a track and trace document. So we want to just point out some good pointers. So when you're at site or even after your interaction with the consumer, you'll see this screen is full with little icons, and I'm going to try and work through it. So think about things like, on the left-hand side there, you can see a little almost a no entry type of sign over a handshake. So think about things like no handshaking. Look at things like don't hand business cards, pamphlets. Sir, grab this and quickly change this and hold this for me. Try and limit exposure as far as possible. The social distancing icon, I think we all know about, so it's very good practice. Just maybe just say to the consumer, ma'am, sir, please keep a distance of 2 meters or 1.5 meters at all times. We mentioned earlier, please ensure that that face mask covers your mouth and your nose. You see that little picture over there. Guys, be mindful about the amount of time. If you see that little icon there, time spent on site. If you're trying to limit the amount of interaction, just be mindful of it. The longer you're there, it could be a longer exposure. You may you might find you walking around a little bit more. So, just have that in the back of your mind. Nothing stops you from asking a consumer, would you open a door for us, please? Could you close a door for us, please? If you don't have to touch a door handle, well, that's first prize. As I said, try not to touch as many surfaces. Try and avoid, using a bathroom, for example, or the consumer's toilets. There's a little icon that I put at the bottom left-hand corner here. It's a little cell phone. Think about things like a staff member saying to a consumer, the owner or the manager wants to speak to you. Be aware that you could be touching a surface and giving it to the consumer. We're trying to make an effort to curtail this COVID-19. If there's documents that need to be signed, which is the next icon, try and see if the consumer would use his own pen instead of passing your pen to the consumer, unless you've sanitized it and unless you've done all the important things. For example, sanitizing and passing it to him, and he gives it back to you, sanitize it. If you look at the little next icon, make sure that you're wearing the correct PPE and appropriate for whatever job it is. So, if the job entails a lot more PPE, as I said to you right in the beginning, Steve and I we're not doctors, we don't know every scenario, but, you might find that on one type of job, you may need a lot more PPE, but we're just giving you the most basic and the minimum at the moment in this webinar. Guys, good idea is and you see the lady in a little icon over here wiping down stuff. If you have touched something, wipe it down. Consider wiping down even your PPE after every session, or that if you've been to one consumer, you're on your way to the next consumer. It's really, really, really good practice to wipe down your PPE. Even tools and equipment that you've used at that, it's good practice to wipe it down. If you see on top there, like I said, please don't avoid using the consumer's bathroom, taps. If you don't have to touch stuff, first prize. You'll see there's an icon there that says, oops, I'm jumping one step. There's an icon that says refix, 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 refix. Now, I just want to go back there. You see this little icon on the right-hand side here. Guys, and I think, Stephen, I want to make a point that, if you've done it, you need to focus on quality of workmanship. I think is going to be very, very, very critical. I think the point we're trying to make is that get it right first time. Try your utmost to make sure you don't have to go back to this job. Comebacks are very expensive to businesses. I think we all can agree to that. Not only is it costly, but it goes about that exposure again of the staff. It's unnecessary just to go back and now be exposed again to the consumer. So guys, big attention to the quality of workmanship. It is extremely, extremely critical. Don't forget sanitizing and wiping down your vehicle. Things like in little pictures that you see there is, the keys. You're in and out. The guys might be doing X amount of jobs during the day. They're in and out of their vehicle. It's their mode of transport. So take time. Look to wiping down door handles, steering wheel. There's a lot of little things. Each vehicle differs from one to the next. Look at wiping down a dashboard, console keys. Guys, my only tip with this is that that please, note that it's not limited. There may be many other high touch areas that we haven't discussed today, but maybe take it into account. Go and spend a few minutes around your vehicle and say, oh, that there is a high touch area. let's just try and aim to play it safe and to ensure that we cover and look and basically just look after our staff, and almost share with them and say, guys, this is what needs to be done, and it's for everyone's safety and it's for everyone's benefit. Only point I want to make on this is please use detergent that will not tarnish or damage components. And always, follow the manufacturer's specifications. You can't put up, a sanitizer that would maybe, for example, eat the chrome off your dashboard, as an example. So, guys, just be wary of that. It is something that you need to look at. Hopefully, you've already got it built into your COVID-19 policy and procedure. We just want to touch and just mention to you, don't overlook this. It's critical. This probably a lot of the staff spend a lot of time in their vehicles traveling from one place to the next. You may, as I said, I don't think we're going to be touching on everything today. I mean, it is quite a big topic, and it changes now and then. But if you are looking for more information, I want to just say you can find it on our website. Please visit our website. We've got lots and lots of information available. We've got some checklists. Guys, please, if I can make any good point today, spend some time on our website, have a look at where we can help and what we have to offer. You can also visit the following websites, www.gov.za under coronavirus, and even health.gov.za. Guys, I've put up my email. If there's any questions you'd like to ask me or some guidance, or even if I can't find the information, I'll try and speak to our occupational health and safety officer, and I definitely will get back to you. The bottom, as you know, that's the hotline number, so feel free to grab a screenshot of that. And I believe there's also a WhatsApp number that you could also use, and I've placed it at the bottom of my screen there. Guys, feel free to use that. And I just want to at this point or this juncture say to you, Steve and I know that we've not considered every possible scenario. We've only got 30 minutes to work on. This is something that's it is a little bit difficult for people. There are some changes. We understand that each job or each task can vary from one consumer to the next, a premise to premise. As I mentioned, level of PPE for certain types of jobs. But what our aim is that we hope that our listeners see the value of asking questions. I think it's very, very important. Ask those questions, maybe up front. It means one phone call. In fact, as you're setting up the appointment, as would normally happen, ask those questions. If you're going 2 days or 3 days later, please make sure that you have a register in place, that you can have a track and trace process. One should not compromise on health and safety, and I think I've said this probably over and over and over. The aim is to reduce risk at all time. Only together, collectively, can we make a difference, guys.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks, Steve, for that. And I think the key thing is we've had a couple of calls in the last week or two where, plumbing contractors have been put at risk, where they've been notified after that there's somebody that's been compromised in the house. We're also finding some of the times where the contractors are not being strong enough in terms of asking those questions, and then also at the same time, whilst on site, is to say, look, can you protect yourself? Can you do this? And, my personal experience has been, you order stuff for delivery and they send you a message saying, please have a mask when receiving goods. Yet the guy who gets out of the vehicle doesn't have a mask or sanitizer. And I think it's one thing for us to be able to have all these rules in place, but it's to ensure that our staff that are out there, that are at the coalface, are doing what we say that they're doing. Spot checks, maybe just a follow-up afterwards with a call. Were the guys doing it, if they haven't filled the form in? But I think we certainly need to up our game in terms of those that, again, that are at that coalface and making sure that we get these things done. We know it's an ongoing process, but, together, if we all work together, we can certainly try and assist and guide wherever possible. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, Steve, I agree with you. And I think as you were talking there, we're in an era where people take photos. Consumers will post, for example, the guy's not wearing a mask. Have a look at this. And then suddenly, I don't think any good business would want that kind of publicity. And I think you make a very important point that, you need to enforce it. You need to maybe do a follow-up call. You need to ensure that those things are driven, that you're not on the back foot, that the last thing you want is negative publicity and someone's made a meal of it, in other words. Thank you very much, Steve.